A lot of people have this idea that your calorie intake or calorie expenditure is a number that contributes to your worth. You are worth more because you ate less calories today. You are worth more because you burned more calories today. Well, that's wildly untrue. You can't see it, but Hannah Montana and I are here to talk about some very important topics on the interwebs. A bit of a slightly different one, because we're actually not going to be looking at YouTube at all whatsoever. We're actually going to be looking at Instagram and TikTok. And we're going to talk about something I've been noticing quite a lot. I had a couple of Gymshark athletes pop up on my social media, and I saw a lot of promotion and discussion surrounding calories, etc, etc. And it got me pondering. It kind of triggered this conversation and this thought process. Obviously, due to the nature of the video, we are obviously going to be talking about calories, potentially eating disorders and things along those lines. As I often do say in videos, if any of those topics are potentially triggering for you, or if there's anything throughout this entire video that might be upsetting for you, it's really not worth watching. Honestly, I'm not that funny. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I shall save you the earache of hearing me sing the Hannah Montana theme tune. So this is the video in question that first triggered this thought process. 66.9 kilos, 1800 calories, 78.4 calories, 300 calories. Oftentimes when we're on social media, we may see influencers and content creators post how many calories they're consuming, post what they weighed, things along those lines. And oftentimes that can trigger the thought process that if you weigh a similar amount, or if you are of the same gender of this influencer or content creator, you should be eating the same as them. It is very key to note in these moments when you are online looking at people, what they eat and what they're consuming, that they are probably training for a goal different to yours. Georgia here, for example, was going through a prep to step on stage. Therefore, her calorie requirements are probably going to be much lower than most people's, because she's going to be getting a lot leaner than most people would be getting. And then oftentimes I get presented with the conversation, such low calories are bad for you, you should never eat so low calories, you should never go beyond 1800 calories as a woman, whatever it may be. And I'm actually going to kind of bounce back with that with a few things. First thing to note, this has actually been mentioned on the podcast before, but there is a big difference between performance and health. Could eating very low calories be unhealthy? Absolutely. Could eating very low calories help you perform how you need to perform for your given task or goal? Absolutely. Sometimes people may choose to sacrifice health to perform better. Going through a very aggressive deficit for a long period of time where you're eating quite low calories, 1800, 1500, maybe even less than 1000 calories a day, may allow you to perform how you need to perform. It may allow you to get lean and stage ready to therefore potentially win the show you are looking to compete in. But in doing so, you're likely going to have to sacrifice aspects of your health. Women, for example, may not actually have a period for multiple months before and or after a bodybuilding prep. There are many women athletes in the world who are competing in track and field events, other events that may not have had periods for years because they are performing at such a high level, and that amount of stress on the body may potentially negatively impact health, and that amount of calorie restriction potentially could also negatively impact health. So like I said, there's a big difference between health and performance. They are often different ends of the spectrum, as Mike on the podcast has mentioned many times. I remember many moons ago I spoke about calories, probably about a year or two ago, and someone left me a comment saying you should never eat less than 1500 calories. And then I kind of bounced back to that and I say, why not? Is eating less than 1500 calories unhealthy? Potentially yes, it could well be unhealthy for you. If the individual in question is not primarily focused about their health and they're more focused on performing, so they want to reach a body fat percentage that is very low, so they can step on stage, whatever it may be, or they want to go through an aggressive mini cut, then that's their choice. It is their goals, and again, at the end of the day, it's not my body, it's not my goals, therefore I can't say too much. It's their goals, their body, and I respect that. If they're willing to potentially sacrifice their health, that defeats the statement of you should never do this, because in some instances, people may want to do that, and in some instances, actually, some people may have to do that. Again, depending on your height, the amount of muscle mass you have, your activity, there's so many things. Some people will need to consume less than 1500 calories a day to put them in a deficit to lose weight. And if their primary goal is weight loss, then to achieve that goal, they would have to do something that could be perceived as unhealthy. And whether it's healthy or not is not for me to say. What I'm simply stating is to achieve what you want to achieve, sometimes you may have to potentially sacrifice health, and that's on you to determine whether you think it's worth it or not. And sometimes you may potentially have to do things that you may not have thought you would ever have to do. Someone actually asked a question surrounding calorie deficit, saying I eat X amount. I can't remember the number exactly. I think it was about 1,500 calories, and they said they were no longer losing weight. And ultimately, if you're not losing weight, more often than not, it's likely because you are no longer in a deficit, and that will essentially need to be changed by a reduction in food or an increase in activity. Some people do unfortunately have to deficit to get to certain body fat percentages or to get a bit leaner on a very low number of calories, despite whether it's deemed to be healthy or not. But then the question I present to you is this: are you that person? And what I mean by that is, for example, you look at Georgia here, who claims that she's maintaining body weight on 3,300 calories. Whether that is accurate and whether that's true, I'm unsure, because that's a lot of calories to maintain body weight on. Just because she's doing it, does that mean you should do it too? And does that mean you have to do it as well? Probably not, no. As always, link down below in the description, you have the link to the upper body workout guide, the glute workout guide, the home workout guide, and the growth guide, in addition to the application form where you can either choose to work with myself, Ryder, or Beth on a one-to-one basis where we will coach you to your goals. Or if none of those things tickle you, you've also got the link to the Train Heroic group coaching site where you can work out with the home workout team, the gym team, or the team that trains like me for less than the cost of your Netflix subscription. So if any of those appeal to you, they're always linked down below in the description and maybe even the comment section too. Ultimately, we are all different. My BMR, so my basal metabolic rate, which is the amount of calories I might be burning at rest, is going to be different to yours, who's going to be different to George's. We can't copy each other, because if we all ate the same number of calories, Georgia might maintain weight, I might lose weight, and you might gain weight. Again, there are many factors that contribute to how many calories we should be eating a day to maintain our body weight. A big contributing factor is obviously going to be your height, to be honest, how tall you are. That's going to be a big contributing factor. Your activity levels, another contributing factor. The amount of tissue you have on your body, both fat tissue and muscle tissue, will burn calories. So the more muscle you have, the more calories you will burn at rest, but probably not as much as you think. But also the more fat you have, the more calories you will burn at rest. Any tissue will likely result in the increase in BMR. And then you go over to TikTok and you see these what I eat in a day videos, which again I think can be fantastic for some people, but also very triggering for others, which I'm going to speak about in a minute. 2,100 calories, and the amount of protein was also shown on screen. It essentially shows you what influencers and content creators are eating during their day, which I think can be fantastic if you're looking for different ideas of maybe different meals you could try, or things you might be able to fit into your macros if that's something you wish to pursue. But also I think it can be a bit of a slippery slope, because sometimes it often encourages people to go down the route of copying exactly what they see on the screen. Just because somebody online has done it doesn't mean you should do it. And just because you see somebody eating a certain amount or eating certain things doesn't mean you should eat the same amount or eat those same things. Oftentimes when we see these things where content creators do post how many calories they're eating a day, this may trigger the thought process of, if they're doing that, maybe I should do that too. Or surely if they're eating that few calories, I should eat that few calories as well, when that's not necessarily the case. This is where some people unfortunately do fall into the trap of fixating on what other people are doing and thinking they should do the same thing, in turn potentially jeopardizing their own physical health and also potentially their mental health too. Oftentimes I speak about social comparison from the perspective of analysing someone else's body and comparing your body to theirs, but I never really speak about it in the sense of calorie intake, analysing somebody else's calorie intake and comparing it to yours and thinking because it's more or less than yours they're better or they're worse than you, whatever it may be. At the end of the day, you have to eat for yourself, you have to eat for your goals, and you have to eat in a manner that helps you achieve what you want to achieve. Do you need to track calories to achieve that? Absolutely not. Do you need to track macros? Absolutely not. Could doing so potentially help you? Again, potentially, but again, that really depends on what you're trying to achieve and how healthy that is for you to do. If doing any of these things is potentially harmful for your mental health and that could contribute to the development of disordered eating or even potentially an eating disorder, I'd definitely say it's not worth it. It's all too easy for us as consumers to fall into the trap of seeing what other people do online and thinking we should do the same. It's all too easy for us as consumers to start following these calorie restrictive diets and these diets in general because other people do it and potentially experiencing great results. But we actually may end up sacrificing our own mental health in the process. I've had many people speak to me about how they used to watch certain creators who would very much focus on their food as a part of their content, which again, that's on them. And in doing so, that would lead them to, without realizing, fall into unhealthy habits and start adopting habits that weren't good for them before, without even realizing they may have actually adopted an eating disorder or disordered eating, which is actually probably a lot more common than you might think. A lot of people have this idea that your calorie intake or calorie expenditure is a number that contributes to your worth. You are worth more because you ate less calories today. You are worth more because you burnt more calories today. Well, that's wildly untrue. I've seen too many people say that they track their calories, but they always aim to go 500 under just to be safe. It doesn't sound like tracking calories is the right thing for you right now. Going 500 under your maintenance calories just to be safe, is that not potentially representative of a problem? Is that not potentially a disordered behavior that you may not even realize might not be healthy for you. You don't just need to be safe when it comes to food, especially if you aren't doing anything that requires you to eat in a restrictive manner, like a bodybuilding prep or something along those lines. If you are eating just for the sake of eating for you and just to live a functioning life and train because you enjoy it and potentially you maybe feel a bit better about yourself, whatever it may be, you don't just need to be safe when it comes to eating. You don't need to feel guilt if you hit your maintenance calories. You don't need to feel guilt if you go over your calories. Eating food and fueling your body should never result in the feeling of guilt, like as if you've done something wrong. You haven't. You've fueled your body how your body needs to be fueled. If you have a goal that requires you to potentially sacrifice your health, then you argue, is that the right thing for you? Do you want health or performance? Because in some cases you can't choose both. And also, if you suddenly think that your calorie intake or calorie expenditure determines your worth, then firstly, why are you allowing a number to determine your worth? Does that sound like a healthy behavior to you, or does that sound like something that may have been fed to you without you realizing because you've been consuming content that might actually be damaging for you? In that case, it might be worth taking a step back from tracking calories. In that case, it might be worth saying, actually, you know what, to achieve what I want to achieve and to be happier and potentially healthier in the process, I don't need to track anything. Why don't I just try fueling my body as my body wants to be fueled and see what happens from there? There are so many different ways to go about eating. There's so many different ways to go about training. Just because you see somebody online do it doesn't mean you should do it too. And just because somebody else is doing it, it works for them, doesn't mean it's going to work for you and doesn't mean it's going to be healthy for you. Again, there are many different aspects of health. You look at physical, you look at social, you look at mental. Is eating how you're eating benefiting you in a physical health perspective? Yes or no? Is eating how you're eating benefiting you from a mental health perspective, or is it potentially hindering you? And is eating how you're eating benefiting you from a social perspective? Have things occurred in your body that may have potentially led you to lose your period, for example? That would indicate something from a physical health perspective might be off. Are you finding yourself obsessing and feeling guilty or lacking worth because you may have not hit your calories or gone over your calories? Again, from a mental perspective, that suggests that something might need to be addressed. Are you cancelling social events that involve going out for meals with your friends or just spending time with your friends because you're worried you might overeat at that meal, or you're worried that you won't be able to hit your calories effectively because of your socializing? Again, that suggests that something might be off and needs to be addressed. What a lot of people don't tell you about the harsh realities of the competitive scene, and for example, I'll use bodybuilding in this case. A lot of athletes who step on stage of any gender do unfortunately come away with bad relationships with food and potentially even eating disorders, potentially also some pretty negative health complications that I can't help but assume might be at least partially due to the way they were eating into that prep. That's their body, their goals, and what they want to achieve. I fully support it, I fully respect it, because again, it's not me, it's on them. But you do have to understand that, as I've mentioned many times before, health and performance might be different things, and just because somebody online is doing something doesn't mean you should do it too. And that's no reason to feel guilty. I just wanted to ramble and waffle about a topic that was brought to me by seeing these videos pop up on my page, and again, I wanted to have this conversation and speak about it while the thought was fresh. But again, these are just my thoughts and opinions. Whether you agree with them or disagree with them is absolutely fine. Either way, I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below. Thank you for tolerating me. Thank you for tolerating Hannah Montana, and thank you for tolerating the video.